if you're so smart, why aren't you happy?
Oof.
Yeah, let that sting for just a second.
Yeah.
Right? It is it's a deeply uncomfortable question.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because it implies that maybe, just maybe, you aren't quite as capable as you think you are.
Exactly. Or even worse, that you've been pouring all of your considerable capabilities and your intellect into the exact wrong things.
Right.
So welcome to today's Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we are exploring a really fascinating collection of notes and essay excerpts. It's titled The Game of Misses, Mastery, and the Art of Living.
And I am so glad to be here to dig into this with you because the mission for this deep dive is, well, it's to figure out why highly capable, educated, and disciplined people so often struggle to actually find happiness.
Which is such a common trap for the people listening to this right now. We're going to be exploring a totally counterintuitive idea that these sources present. The idea that happiness it's not a finish line. You don't just cross it after achieving enough success.
Right. Instead, it is a skill. It's a daily practice, much like nutrition or fitness. And to master that skill, you really have to get incredibly comfortable with being imperfect.
Okay, let's unpack this. And I want to start with a metaphor from the text that takes us straight to the golf course.
It is a brilliant place to start, especially for people who have built their entire identities around this pursuit of excellence.
Yeah.
The author, Os Hillman, he brings in observations from two of the greatest golfers who have ever lived, Ben Hogan and Jack Nicklaus.
Legends.
Exactly. And Hogan famously said, "This is a game of misses. The guy who misses the best is going to win."
Which sounds so backward at first.
It does, and Nicklaus echoed that sentiment. He noted that he believed he just failed a bit less than everyone else. Now, coming from champions of their caliber, you have to realize these aren't the words of men who have resigned themselves to mediocrity.
No, not at all.
They are men who fundamentally understand the actual nature of true excellence.
Right, because, I mean, in a standard round of 18 holes,
Yeah.
you are guaranteed to have some great shots, some totally average shots, and some genuinely poor ones.
Yeah.
I think about this in my own life. Like when I try to put together a piece of flat pack furniture, I usually go in with this fantasy that I'm going to execute every single step perfectly.
Oh, absolutely. We all do that.
And then when I inevitably put a shelf on backward, I just lose my mind. And the whole afternoon cascades into a total disaster.
But Hillman points out that a professional golfer doesn't live in that fantasy world. They don't try to eliminate poor shots completely because that's frankly impossible.
Right.
Instead, they focus entirely on missing well. They want to keep the ball in a position where recovery is still an option.
Just keeping it out of the water hazard, basically.
Exactly. They are actively avoiding those compounded mistakes that turn a single bad swing into a round-ruining double bogey.
What's fascinating here is how seamlessly this sports analogy maps onto our everyday lives and even onto ancient spiritual wisdom.
Oh, yeah. The connection the text makes is incredible. Life, regardless of your philosophy or your current circumstances, is exactly this. It's a game of misses.
You are going to face failures.
You're going to face failures of judgment, failures of character, failures of execution. It is simply unavoidable.
And there's that brilliant linguistic connection made in the notes regarding the ancient concept of sin.
Yes. If you look at the original Hebrew word for sin, which is chatta, its literal functional translation is missing the mark.
Missing the mark. That reframing, it takes so much of the heavy abstract dread away from the word. It makes it instantly tangible. You aimed, you fired, you missed the mark. Now what?
Precisely the right question, because what distinguishes a life well lived is not the miraculous absence of those misses. It's what you choose to do in the moments right after.
Do you compound the error?
Right. Do you let that one miss define your entire identity? Or do you acknowledge it, make repairs wherever you possibly can, and then continue? The text actually uses King David as the ultimate instructive example of this.
Oh, right. The historical and scriptural record.
Yeah. Looking impartially at the record provided in the notes, David failed catastrophically. He committed adultery with Bathsheba, and then, to cover up his actions, he literally orchestrated the death of her husband.
I have to pause there, though, because David's failures were massive historical betrayals. I mean, most people listening to this deep dive aren't orchestrating anything nearly that dark.
Thankfully.
Right. So how does that level of failure translate to our daily lives?
It's a fair point. You might not be orchestrating historical betrayals, but you might have lost your temper with your team today.
Right.
Or you completely dropped the ball on a massive client presentation. Or broken a promise to a friend.
The scale is different, but the mechanism is the same.
The mechanism of recovery is exactly the same. The text highlights something astonishing from the scriptures here. God still referred to David as a man after my own heart,
Despite the murder and adultery.
despite all of it. And the author makes it very clear that this was not because David was perfect. It was because of how he handled the aftermath. He repented. He owned it.
He acknowledged the miss without rationalizing his behavior or minimizing the harm he caused. He didn't flee from accountability. He bore the consequences, grieved genuinely, and worked to recover. This is the model being offered to you right now. Life isn't about avoiding the miss. It's about honest, courageous recovery.
So it's about stopping the slide. You stop just going through the motions and you start actually growing through them.
Yes.
But that brings up a very practical challenge, I think. Because it's one thing to hear a high-level concept like grow through your failures, and it's another thing entirely to actually change your behavior at 2 p.m. on a stressful Tuesday.
Which is exactly why the text introduces a beautiful parable from the tradition of Anthony de Mello.
I loved this part.
It's so good. So there's a master whose disciples are getting incredibly frustrated with him. They want deep, complex, abstract philosophy to guide their lives.
They want the textbook.
Right, they want the manual. But the master only ever speaks to them in simple stories and parables. Finally, he tells his frustrated students, you have yet to understand that the shortest distance between a human being and truth is a story.
Wow.
And then he follows it up with this incredible image. He says, a lost gold coin is found by means of a penny candle. The deepest truth is found by means of a simple story.
That image of the penny candle really sticks with you.
Yeah.
Because a dense 50-page psychological framework on resilience that's completely useless to me when my inbox is overflowing and I'm late for a meeting.
Exactly. The disciples wanted abstraction, but the master knew that abstract principles rarely, if ever, change human behavior.
Short, memorable aphorisms and stories do.
Yes. When you hear the story about Ben Hogan managing his bad shots, a completely different type of understanding becomes available to you. You can instantly visualize yourself as that golfer.
You can physically feel the frustration of a wayward shot.
And you immediately recognize the choice you have to make right after it. A simple phrase like, do less better, or miss well, acts as that penny candle in a pitch-black room.
It's absolutely not brilliant enough to illuminate the entire house.
But it gives you just enough light to see the very next step you need to take.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Ugh.
Because the text takes all of this, the resilience, the skill development, the penny candles of wisdom, and places it inside a much larger, much more sobering context.
The relational context.
Exactly. The context of our relationships. Specifically, Ryan Holiday brings up a quote from Donald Miller that, I have to admit, it hit me right in the chest as someone who works a lot.
Oh, it's a heavy quote.
Miller is talking about the office behind his childhood house where his father worked. He says, that's where my dad worked to provide for us. What I never hope she thinks is, that's the place my dad loved more than me.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you start to see the hidden, often unacknowledged cost of the achievement-oriented mindset. Holiday actually catalogs testimonies from the children of some of the most highly consequential figures in human history.
He mentions the son of Albert Einstein, right?
Yes, the son of Einstein, the daughter of Nelson Mandela, and the children of various presidents and innovators. And a painful, consistent pattern emerges from all of them.
Which is?
It's basically you were there for so many people as part of your job, but you were never there for me.
It is heartbreaking to read, and the text clarifies that this isn't an argument against ambition. The world absolutely needed Nelson Mandela. We needed Einstein, Steve Jobs, Eleanor Roosevelt. Their work was profoundly consequential.
It changed the world.
But the piercing question being asked here is, did it have to come at such a high relational cost? And more importantly for you, the listener, does your ambition have to come at that cost?
The author writes a line that serves as a massive reality check here. Being important doesn't change what your most important job is.
And that job is being present for the people who actually depend on you.
Exactly. Because eventually, the spotlight recedes. The fame, the significant career milestones, the promotions, they all fade. When they do, your children are still there. No legacy or body of work can fill the absence of a relationship.
This brings the golf metaphor back, but with a much sharper edge, I think.
How so?
Well, you can miss shots in your career, in your business, or in your creative projects, and you can recover from them. But a childhood only passes once.
That is so true.
That specific window of time where a child needs you to just show up and be interested, that window eventually closes permanently. Mastering your misses means knowing precisely which shots carry the highest, irrecoverable stakes.
Irrecoverable stakes. That phrase alone is a penny candle.
It really forces you to audit where your energy is going.
It does.
And speaking of auditing ourselves, the text drops a line a bit later that is incredibly jarring the first time you read it. It says, "To grow to heaven, a tree's roots must grow down to hell."
It is an intense image, but a profoundly mature one. It challenges the common assumption that genuine goodness is just untested innocence.
Wait, hold on. Unpack that for me. Are you saying that someone who has never been tempted to do something wrong isn't actually good? They are just untested.
That is exactly the argument being made. True goodness is not the naive virtue of someone who has simply never faced adversity, temptation, or pressure.
Okay.
Genuine goodness belongs to the person who has looked clearly and honestly at their own internal capacity for failure, for selfishness, and for harm, and has actively chosen to do otherwise.
This goes back to King David.
Precisely. Think back to him. His greatness was completely inseparable from his massive failures. His repentance only meant something because his sins were so real, and his confrontation with his own darkness was so absolute.
It's the idea that you have to understand your own shadow to actually choose the light.
Yes. And the author Robert Greene makes a parallel observation about this when discussing mastery and the creative life. He notes that the single greatest danger you face after achieving a level of success is complacency.
That slow, creeping smugness.
Exactly. Where you start believing you already have all the answers, you stop examining your flaws, you feel superior. The moment that happens, your creativity dies and your personal growth stalls.
Green's prescription for that complacency is what he calls active wonder. And I love that the text brings in a quote from Franz Kafka to illustrate this. Kafka said, "Youth is happy because it has the capacity to see beauty. Anyone who keeps the ability to see beauty never grows old."
You have to keep the roots growing downward. You maintain that active wonder by reckoning honestly with your own ignorance and your moral complexity.
It's an active process.
Very active. And this kind of honest reckoning is not a descent into despair. It is the very thing that makes genuine ascent possible. A tree without deep roots cannot survive a storm. If you don't examine your own capacity for failure, any virtue you display is just going to be brittle. It will break the moment it is actually tested.
Reckoning with your own flaws like that takes a lot of mental energy. It actually makes me think about the section in the notes regarding mental preparation. There's this great anecdote Tony Dungy shares about the celebrated college basketball broadcaster, Bill Raftery.
Wow, the preparation story, yes.
Raftery is legendary for preparing obsessively before every single broadcast. We're talking hours of watching game film, interviewing coaches, and researching every possible strength, weakness, and injury report. But here is the crazy part. Over 90% of the information he gathers is never actually used on the air.
This raises an important question for anyone striving for excellence. If 90% of your work goes completely unused and unseen, why do it? Why not just prep the 10% you know you'll need?
A shallow analysis would call that 90% a massive waste of time.
But Dungy points out that preparation isn't just about deploying information. It's about the unfakeable quality of presence and readiness it creates within you. Knowing that you have done the deep work produces a confidence that cannot be manufactured.
Raftery doesn't know which obscure piece of trivia will suddenly become relevant during a fast-paced game.
No, he couldn't possibly know. But because he has prepared for everything, he is genuinely ready for anything.
But then the text uses this logic to introduce a strategy that I honestly have to push back on a little. It advises us to set the bar low. Doesn't setting the bar low just breed laziness or mediocrity? I mean, we're talking about highly capable overachievers here.
It sounds like a contradiction, but it's actually the ultimate preparation for reality. Setting the bar low in this context doesn't mean lowering your standards for your own work.
Okay.
It means waking up and actively expecting that the day will not go perfectly. It means accepting that people will not cooperate, traffic will be terrible, and obstacles will definitely arise.
Oh, I see.
If you begin your day with the rigid fantasy of a frictionless existence, the first unexpected problem will completely derail your mood and your focus. But if you prepare for the friction, if you set the bar low for how smoothly the world will accommodate you, you remain steady when the turbulence arrives.
Okay, I see the distinction now. You're managing your expectations of the environment, not your standards for yourself.
Exactly. And this leads to perhaps the most liberating and demanding truth in the entire text. You have control over your actions, but you have zero control over the outcomes.
It's liberating because you get to drop the impossible burden of trying to control the universe. You just do the work.
But it is demanding because it completely removes your excuses. You cannot use the lack of a guaranteed outcome as a reason not to act.
Taking the action is, in and of itself, the victory.
Yes. The text points out that the harder we grasp for specific results, the more those results seem to slip through our fingers. You have to care deeply about the process, relish the deep work, and let the outcome be what it will be.
So what does this all mean when we put it together? How does auditing our relationships and focusing on the process actually lead to a good life?
That's the core question.
The text starts synthesizing this by quoting Miguel de Cervantes. We are the sons of our deeds, meaning we literally become what we repeatedly do. Not what we intend to do, not what we tell ourselves we are, but what we actually do in the small accumulating moments of our days.
The notes even point to the 10th commandment, the rule against coveting, as proof of this.
Right. It's framed not just as a rule about property, but as a warning that our interior orientation, what we constantly dwell on in our minds, fundamentally shapes who we become.
Which brings us to a really beautiful Buddhist closing mentioned in the notes. May all beings be happy.
It sounds simple.
It does. But the author argues this isn't just a polite, pleasant sentiment to end a meditation. It is the logical destination of everything we've just discussed. When you truly develop happiness as a skill, when you master the art of missing well, when you stay intensely present for the people who matter, and when you act without a desperate attachment to the outcomes, you begin to radiate a very specific kind of energy.
The legendary coach John Wooden observed that this kind of genuine enjoyment and energy naturally stimulates and inspires everyone around you.
You create what the text calls a sequence of goodness.
And I appreciate how careful the author is here to avoid toxic positivity. They aren't promising that doing good things means the universe will immediately hand you a promotion and a perfect life.
No, it is much subtler and much truer than that. The claim is that when goodness becomes the organizing principle of your life, governing your actions, your thoughts, and how you handle failure, the overall trajectory of your life bends toward flourishing. Character, when consistently expressed over time, essentially becomes your destiny.
But getting there requires what the writer Richter Aban calls the magic that turns dreams into reality. Courage.
Courage to take action when you are afraid.
The courage to return to the game after a humiliating professional failure.
The courage to stay present with your family when escaping into your inbox feels easier.
And the courage to root yourself deeply, even when the soil around you is dark. To root deeply even when the soil is dark, that is profound.
It really is.
So bring it all back to the provocation we started with. If you're so smart, why aren't you happy? The text suggests it might be because you've treated happiness as a finish line instead of a daily practice. Or maybe you've spent more time managing your career metrics than managing your personal misses.
Well, maybe you just got a little too successful and stopped looking at your own flaws.
But the corrective is beautifully simple. It's just a penny candle's worth of light to guide your next steps. Show up, miss well, forgive yourself, stay present, keep wondering, act without grasping.
And as we close this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've spent this whole time talking about how to handle our own misses and our own internal roots. But think about how this applies outward.
That's a great point.
We talked about how the shortest distance to truth is a story, and how life is a game of missing well. Think about your biggest, most frustrating miss recently. What is the story you are telling yourself about it right now? Is it a story that defines you as a failure, or can you rewrite it as the necessary setup for your most courageous recovery?
That is a phenomenal question to take into the rest of the week. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
We hope you found a few penny candles of your own today to light the way forward. Take care and goodbye.
Goodbye, and may all beings be happy.